Mhm. Can everybody see my screen now? Are you all able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Oh God, thank you all for your patience. So yesterday we talked a lot about infrastructure threats, and how to secure infrastructure threat, how to monitor the infrastructure, and how to secure them at a high level, and then how to secure our email infrastructure. So today we are delving into module 9. Module 9 covers infrastructure security. So it's still more talks on infrastructure. I don't know what's going on, but let's wait for this to load. How you
Professor,
guys?
I was having a loading issue yesterday as well.
Yes, I saw your email. I responded a moment ago. I don't know why that is. Are you still having that issue today?
Yes, I am. I tried to complete some of the labs that are due today, and I was having that issue as well.
Okay, I would have to escalate this to the Cengage team. Um, I'll escalate it to the Cengage team and have them resolve it.
Okay.
So today we're focusing on infrastructure security. We're going to look at the different types of security appliances and how they can be used. We'll describe security software protections. We'll explain how secure design can aid in mitigating attacks. And then, for example, zero trust architecture. What does that look like? Then we will talk about different access technologies and how they can be used. I'm going to share a lot of stories because I actually started out my career as a security engineer, deploying some of these infrastructure security solutions across different organizations. So I will be sharing all of that with you. Let me pull up my notes. For some reason, my system is a little slow. It's been on the opposite. Have you ever been in a situation where you go to an hotel, or even how many of you guys have been on the PG campus? Nobody? Okay. So when you try to connect to the Wi-Fi on campus, what happens? You try to connect to Wi-Fi on campus, what happens? email is not the answer. Come on, man. What happens? Tell me what happens.
It makes you go to a website. You have to enter your email.
Very good. Without doing that, are you able to use the internet? No, right? So that's one way of securing the infrastructure. Somebody's trying to get into class. So that's one way of securing the infrastructure. Let's see. All right. So there are different security appliances. If you remember yesterday, we talked about monitoring and the different ways or the different types of monitoring that are there. We talked about SNMP, using SNMP, SNMP traps. There are other methods of monitoring. I'll try to go through each one of them today with you. I'm trying to pull up my notes to see the labs, because I think we haven't done enough labs in this class, apart from the labs that you do for assignments. So I'm trying to see if I have some labs for you guys to play with. Okay, we'll get to that. So there are different security appliances. We mentioned Wireshark yesterday. I mentioned Nmap as well. I said in all that I knowing, if you want to really do well within the security space, know how to use Wireshark, know how to use your Nmap, graduate to being able to use the tools in your Kali environment. I believe Kali, they introduced a more recent one, and then they also introduced one for penetration testing or another penetration testing suite for AI systems. But your Kali, knowing to use your Kali, let me see. And there is this all time website where you can also find some tools. I'm going to put that in the chat. It's sektools.org. Like if you just need anything, just let me know. I have a lot of resources and information that you might want to leverage, but just let me know. This sectool.org has at least 125 network security tools. Wireshark is number one. Metasploit. Metasploit you can find in your Kali suite. Nessus Nessus has a commercial version now, but then I think that they stopped providing that the open source one. But yeah, there is zero. Let me see. There is another vulnerability management tool that is more open source. If I remember the name, I'm going to share with you guys. Aircrack, Snot. Snot is an IDS and an IPS, intrusion detection and intrusion prevention system. You have Cain and Abel. So I put the link in the chat, but here it is. If you go to sektools.org, you'll see all the tools. I don't know. I'm sure that there will be a more recent what's it called? A more recent version of sektool.org. but this is my whole time, and even if you don't find the most updated tools here, once you go to each website, like John the Ripper site, you will see the updated version. If you go to your Wireshark, you see the updated version of Wireshark on the Wireshark homepage. So even though this one is saying it was last updated 2017, that doesn't mean that Wireshark hasn't been updated since. It just means that that page was last updated at that time. If you guys know of any updated sites like this that has these tools, please share with me. But this is my whole time. And a lot of the mechanisms that are built or that through which these appliances or these security tools operate is built into security appliances that we use within the enterprise. And so some of the workings or some of the principles within those appliances is to do gap analysis. What do you mean by that? They are looking at, oh, what's the current state versus what's the ideal states. So some of the appliances are doing that. They're doing segmentation, which means dividing the network into smaller networks to enhance security. For example, you have PCI DSS. PCI DSS requires that you separate your card data environment from every other environment, right? So segmentation, or in the world of SCADA and ICS system infrastructure, the separating the main network from the critical infrastructure network. Then some do isolation. For example, you see some of the anti-malware. For example, we looked at VirusTotal. VirusTotal scanned the file that we've uploaded, and it looks at it put it in an isolated environment, first of all. So majority of the scanning tools also, before making the decision to let the data into the environment, they isolate the environment, they isolate the data, I should say, or the file, and see if it's an attack surface before they let it in. So keeping multiple instances of an attack surface, or keeping keeping like a sandbox where you run things before letting them into the main environment is really being able to isolate. Then you also have least privilege. Least privilege is granting access only. So the network access control tools, for example, that pop-up that shows up when you go to the college, it's like it gives you access to the internet. It doesn't give you access to the college's network. So when you log into the computer in the college, what you'll have access to is different from what you'll have access to if you log in to the Wi-Fi, right? Because those computers in the classrooms, they are wired, right? They're connected directly to the switch, but you are on the wireless access point, and the access is different. And even at that, the access between those computers and the servers of the organization is also easy. So the principle of least privilege is something that some of these appliances use. Configuration enforcement, which means applying measures to reduce unnecessary vulnerabilities. So you will see that, for example, with block listing or allow listing solution, like application or URL filtering solution, will do that. Decommissioning is also a principle of removing or dismantling a technology that is no longer required or that should be out of service. Then you have selection of effective controls, choosing proper safeguard for your production network, proper countermeasures, and also physically locating devices in secure location is very important. I don't know that any one of us is able to walk into the college's data center or even know where it is, right? Even if you know where it is, you must be working for the college to be able to get that type of access. So device placement, physical device placement is important. And even the access points that you connect to, you see that they are always placed at the ceiling of the classrooms or of the hallways, so that if anybody tries to physically access it, they will attract attention. And so let's talk about common networking devices, and then we'll talk about how they are being secured, the different kinds of appliances. Before we go forward, what are your questions? What are your questions? Questions. Okay. So, when I got my bachelor's degree, the first thing that I did was to get some training on to figure out what do I want to do. I studied computer science to figure out what do I even want to do in the space, right? So I stumbled on this training, and they call it CCNA. Everybody knows CCNA. So I said, okay, let me even try, because I like, something that I could get my hands dirty on. So I said, let me try CCNA. So I tried CCNA. I was in class, and then we'll get creeping to put cables together. They exposed us to switches. And so I was wondering, okay, so this is how these things work. And then you get exposure to network switches. And I believe that you guys would have also taken the networking class. I think it's 1450. How many of you have taken 1450 class? No? Okay. Devin says he is taking the 1450 class. Okay. So pretty much, if you think about the hand-to-hand connection, you want to send a mail from your phone, or even the fact that, let's look at your home network, for example. Your home network is wireless, pretty much. But what is serving you, or what is making your devices connect is the router. Within an enterprise, the architecture is slightly different. And the switch is really the one that is connected to the router, and the router to the internet to give internet access. So the first thing that you will see is the switch. So from a wired perspective, access point from wireless perspective. So the switches can learn about devices that are connected to it, and there is a way that the switches need to be properly configured, so that, you remember the MAC flooding attack we talked about, so that they are not susceptible to those types of attacks. And so switches also, at a switch level, there's some level of security that you can apply. For example, we call something port security. As you know, switches have different ports, right? So let's say maybe we're dealing with let's assume that we're dealing with a Cisco switch, right? Cisco switches have different ports. So this is a Cisco Catalyst 9000 switch. And they do have different ports. And so you're connecting cables from the endpoints to the switch ports, right? See all those small ports. The cables are laid to the switch ports. And so sometimes each port has a label. So let's assume you have a 48 switch port and is labeled gigabit 0/1 to 48, for example. All right. And so like this one. 48 switch ports. What you could do is to configure the switch to say, hey, this switch port 1, say gigabit 0/1, you are only allowed to connect to the MAC address of the router. So you force the MAC, you configure it to only allow access to the MAC address of the router. Then let's say 5 to the MAC address of this server. That's port security. It is mapping the MAC address to the switch port, or even limiting the numbers of MAC addresses that a switch port can learn. Say, okay, on this port, it's only one MAC address that is allowed. If you're seeing two MAC address, chances are that there could be an attacker could have, there's a rogue device, maybe a hub that is extending the network, which is not ideal. Okay. Some of the common network related attacks, we talked about some of them yesterday, MAC address flooding. This is a situation where an attacker overflows the switch's address table with fake MAC address. And so it forces it to act like a hub, get data, not intelligently sending the data to the right destination, but just forwarding it to everybody. So port security is very important there. So using a switch that can close the port. So if the port or allows, certain number of MAC addresses. Then you also have MAC address spoofing, impersonation, right? The security defense there is to configure the switch rather, so that only one port can be assigned per MAC address. Then we have HAP poisoning, address resolution protocol. We talked about that yesterday, where an attacker sends a forged HAP packet to the source device and substitute the attacker's computer with its own MAC address. And so there are some HAP detection appliances that can be used there. Then at the network layer too, there's what's called port mirroring. So port mirroring is pretty much looking at all of these 48 switch ports and saying, oh, port 1 to 48, send all the traffic that or let me rephrase. They say port 1 to 47. Port 1 to 47. All the traffic that you receive, send it to port 48. All right, send a copy of that traffic to port 48, and then the attacker plugs their own device on port 48. So what does that mean? It means the attacker is getting a copy of all the traffic that is traversing the network. That is port mirroring. It's sitting here, but it's taking a copy of everything that is going on the network. Okay, so that is taking all of the traffic in. While this is not good in the hands of an attacker, it is good in the hands of the defender, because then you can plug your security tool to port 48, and you can use that security tool on port 48 to monitor if there is bad traffic or if something bad is happening on all of the other ports. Okay. So you could plug that to your IPS and your IDS, and then use your IDS to monitor the traffic that is traversing that switch. Then we have routers. So just the way you have your router at home, router is the one that gives you access to the internet actually. So it is the main one that is internet facing. When the internet service providers drop their cable, they drop it and it gets connected to your router. Your router gets connected to your switches, and your switches to your other servers and users, or your switches to your wireless access points, and then your endpoints connects to the access points wirelessly. Okay. So routers can also perform certain level of security functions, and that's where the access control lists come in. These access control lists are sets of permissions or rules that permit or deny data from flowing in and out of the router's network interface. So routers can protect against devices that imitate the computer's IP address, For example, they have anti-spoofing function. So at the router level, you can say permit ports 443, deny port 23, deny port 80. So you could configure access control list at the router level. Then you have your servers. These are servers because they serve certain functions. Yeah, that's why they are called servers. And they distribute resources and services to devices that connect to the network. For example, you have web server. It's called web server because it provides web service. You have database server. It's called a database server because it's used to store data, right? You have DNS server because it's performing DNS function. So it could be or those servers could have the same configuration, the same hardware components, the same operating system, but they are different. And what makes them different is the service that they provide. So it's very important to make sure that a server is providing a server is not providing conflicting service, or the services that a server is providing is not enough to compromise. It should not compromise other service. What does that mean? You have a server that is a web server and is also a database server. That's a red flag, right? That means your database can be accessible from the internet. So port 80 should not be open. If database port like 1521 is open, port 80 should not be open. Port 443 should not be open. It's because it introduces security flaw. Greg, what's your question?
So earlier in the class, not this class, but one in the past, we talked about hardening the different servers. Is it hardening consist of like one particular type of server, or that can go across all of them?
So yeah, hardening actually happens at the operating system level for servers. So you're looking at it, and it's the same. And even when it comes to server hardening, you could do it. You can take a centralized approach in hardening the server, which means you are pushing the hardening configuration to all of the servers. So it's like open this port, close this port. This is the account lockout account if it's inactive for 5 minutes or for 15 minutes. Do not allow password reuse. Keep password up to maybe 21 times. If someone has to change their pass, they cannot reuse password. That's hardening, right? So it's applying, and then it's also applying vulnerability patches. But what I was actually talking about is also making sure that when you are configuring your servers, you are intentional about, or organizations are intentional about the service that a server is providing, and the server is not providing conflicting service. So imagine that your database server is also your DNS server. That's not a good thing. All right. Imagine that your application server is also a database server. That's not a good thing. Or your application server is also, or your web server is also as database. It means that the data can be reached from the internet. That's what it means. All right. So making sure that that's separate, controlling permission, removing unnecessary software, and physically securing the location of the server is also one way of securing those servers. Then we have load balancers. So load balancers is just the way the name implies, is often used to, when you have multiple servers that are providing, for the sake of availability, you don't want a single point of failure. So you have 5 to 6 web servers, right? To put a load balancer before the web servers so that that load balancer distributes the request evenly amongst those servers so that one server does not get overwhelmed. So that's often used for the purpose of ensuring availability. Okay, so they can detect and stop attack too. So maybe there is overwhelming request coming to the application. Instead of allowing that through, they could also filter that away. They can prevent attack protocols as well. And then they can also hide HTTP error pages and remove server identification header from the HTTP responses. Okay. Questions? All right. Now that we understand the core of the infrastructure, so switches, routers, load balancers. There are also security appliances that we need, that organizations put on the network. I would have loved for this to be a classroom environment so that we could actually draw on the board. Does any one of you guys know any? I know there is a device that I can connect to my computer and then I can make drawings and annotation with my hand. Yeah, I need one of those actually. To get one of those. So, but when it comes to infrastructure, let me pull up the screenshots that we had yesterday. I hope it's still there. Okay, screenshots. And then, let me see, it should be from yesterday. Okay, so remember when we talked about our network from yesterday, we had the web layer, application layer, database layer. We added our access point here. This is our switch, and our switches help connect all of our servers together. So then we had our router connecting to the internet, but in between we had a firewall and we have our VPN connection to other branches here. All right, so the firewall is pretty bi-directional. Most of you may have heard about the firewall. It is inspecting the packets that is egressing or ingressing the network to take certain actions, whether to deny or to allow that traffic. So the actions are really based on specific rules. One of the free firewall or open source firewall that I know that you could use and play with is pfSense. It is a open source firewall, and it has IPS. I believe it has a IPS and IDS as well. Hold on. Yeah. There is another open source IPS IDS that you can use with pfSense. So it's free, it's open source. You could download it and play with it. So you have the policies, and let me just show you an example of firewall rules. And then we can look at that together. So take, for example, you have an inbound rule. Let me see if this opens up. Ooh. Oh, this is a Windows firewall rule, right? This is a Windows firewall rule. Looking for an actual firewall. But let's use this. So you see, something like this, a rule that allow inbound web traffic. So this is simply what you see as the source, any source, meaning any IP address coming to this destination, specify the IP address of the server, and trying to come in through this port 80 or port 443, and the action is to allow. On the flip side, this is one that blocks egress traffic. So this is saying the source is any internal IP address. So, and the reason why this is, let me not tell you the reason why, but why do you think that when you look at this rule, why do you think that this rule is needed? Why do you think that rule is needed? The rule is saying that any internal IP that is coming to any destination on SMTP, which is a simple mail transfer protocol, block it. Why do you think why do you think that this rule is good or is needed? What's the advantage of this rule? Ahmed. Kaylan Rivas. I'm seeing that name for the first time. Kaylan. You want to give it a shot? Devin, you want to give it a shot? No. Yeah. So this is important because any internal IP should not be a source that is coming from outside. All right. So it's like, how should an internal IP that is internal to the organization be coming from outside? All right. So the firewall will look at it and say any internal IP that is coming from outside to anywhere on this port, block it. And this prevents, and you see it here, it prevents compromised internal machine. So this simply means that either the internal machine is compromised or someone is spoofing the IP address of an internal machine. Because they are located outside of the network, all right? That's the firewall. And there are different kinds of firewall. They are rule-based, they are policy-based, and they are also URL-based firewall. In fact, there are web application firewalls as well. So the URL based firewall are pretty much looking at the website, the content of the website, and you can block. So you can say all social media websites, block them from your enterprise, or block them from so time to so time. All gambling sites, all gaming sites at the enterprise level, block them. It's a content or URL filtering firewall that will do that. And so it can allow, it can bypass, deny, force allow, or just log, which is just in monitoring mode. Okay. So this is an example. BullGuard is an example of content filtering software or URL filtering. And here it's saying block all adult sites, block all controversial content, block all thing that is related to gambling, alcohol, block dating sites, what all that's needed for. And the reason is simple. Those sites get compromised easily. Seen a situation where a spouse, a man gets an email where the attackers are telling him that he should pay a certain ransom, otherwise they will expose his nude pictures. And what he's been doing is he's been visiting this site and he's been, God knows, in front of his camera doing whatever it does in the process of watching those adult sites. And they got access to his camera and took pictures of him in the process of that. So that's a major issue. Okay, so that's why those sites should be blocked at the enterprise level. Then you have, again, there are different types of categories of firewall. It can be hardware-based and it can be software-based. Like the Microsoft firewall is the software-based, so it's like a virtual firewall. Okay. Then they can be host versus appliance versus virtual. So host is hosted on a server. Some have physical appliances, for example, the likes of Checkpoint, Fortinet firewall. They have appliances. I believe some of them now are starting to have the software version as well, or virtual, which means that for example, what you see with security groups in the cloud environment, those are virtual firewalls. And there could be open source or proprietary. Open source firewall like PSS that I shared, proprietary like the Cisco firewall, Fortinet, Checkpoint, FireEye. There's so many of them. Then it could be stateful or stateless. Stateful means that it keeps a state. It keeps a state of the request that comes in and the request that goes out. It keeps a state of the request that comes in and goes out. So it knows which device is asking for what. It knows which device is asking for what. And it knows which device is asking for what. So it keeps a state of the conversation. Stateless is it doesn't keep a state of the conversation. It's making decision maybe based on the ports and the protocol and the IP address. Okay. Then you have dedicated firewall versus network access control list. And so dedicated firewall or firewall appliances and NACLs, these or network access control list, these can be configured on routers. This we also see them as services in the cloud environment. Okay. So we have these are appliance firewall right here. You have your internet, the router, the firewall, then your switch, then you have your web servers, mail servers. Obviously, This is a two leg firewall. And so this is more so like your DMZ because this web server is sitting here so that people can access it through the web. This is like your internal network where you have your databases and your application. This is also sitting in the DMZ area because this is a resource that you want people from the internet to be able to access, separated from the internal network where you will keep your databases and your application servers. Okay. So there are also several specialized firewall appliances. Like I mentioned earlier, you have web application firewall. In order to know any tool, I think you just Google web application firewall. Just look at their Gartner report for any solution. So if you look at the Gartner report for web application firewall, you see Akamai. Let me see, open it, image a new tab. Akamai is here in Imperva. I've known Imperva since like forever. Then the challengers, you have Cloudflare, Fastly, F5, AWS also have their own web application firewall, Barracuda, Fortinet are in the niche area. And this has been here since like the beginning of my security career. So, and Akamai, probably because it's more popular in the US, but in other region, you see Imperva is a very strong leader. Then you have next generation firewalls as well. With next generation firewall, that's where you will see the likes of what you call it, Checkpoint, the likes of FireEye. Yeah. Right. So Fortinet, Palo Alto, Checkpoint, these are the leaders here. Juniper Networking by HP, as well as that Cisco is not for hybrid mesh firewall. No, not for hybrid mesh firewall. I'm looking for next generation firewall. But I can assure you that those three that you saw there, they will be the one that are next generation firewall. Okay. Then we have UTMs, just the way the name implies, Unified Threat Management. I believe pfSense also does some level of unified threat management. What does unified threat management mean? It means that it does more than firewall. It means that it's also able to do IPS and IDS. Sometimes even able to do anti-malware. So it's like a unified threat management is able to do more than the firewall. Okay. Then we have the 7 firewall and network address translation gateway. I don't know why they included layer 7 firewall, because layer 7 firewall should be the web application firewall, but I might be tripping, but exactly my point. So layer 7 firewall is the same thing there as WAF actually. And then you have network address translation gateway. What does this mean? When it comes to networking, you have your internal IP addresses and you have your external IP addresses, right? The external IP, so when you reach out to the ISP and they drop their line, what they are essentially giving you is IP or set of IP that is public. So you have one IP that can serve your entire household, or a number of IP that can serve maybe 5 external IP that can serve an entire organization. But how do you ensure, or how do these thousands of servers or these numbers of internal devices that you have at home, how are they able to use their internal IP to get to the internet? It's because your internal IP addresses, which are called the private IP addresses, are translated to the public IP addresses using what is called Network Address Translation Protocol. So organizations also have specialized network address translation gateway, and their work is to translate internal requests to public IP addresses so that those requests can go out and come back in and you get a response. That's what the network address translation gateway is about. Okay. Right. So then we also have proxy servers. Just the way the name sounds, proxy is a device that acts as substitute on behalf of a primary device. So you have the primary device that is making a request, but is not able to make that request directly. And these are often used for several security reasons. There are several use cases. So, for example, you have a forward proxy. A forward proxy is a computer or an application that intercepts a user's request from the internal secure network and processes that request on behalf of that user. It could be because you don't want the internal networking details or internal information getting outside of the network. Then you also have a reverse proxy. The reverse proxy routes requests coming from an external network to the correct internal server. So acting on behalf of. Okay. Let me take a pause. What are your questions? What are your questions? Okay. Again, this might seem like we are drinking from a fire hose. It's the nature of the class. It's a month that we have to cover all of this topic. I wish we had more time and we are able to do a lot more hands-on stuff in class. But it's the nature of this class. So we also have technologies that are used to lure or bait threat actors, and that's why it's called honeypot. Honeypot has 2 goals: to deflect and discover. So these are servers or systems that are intentionally built to have flaws, so that when the attacker sees this flaw, they think that they have the crown jewel, or they think that they have something to hold on to or to exploit, while the organization does discovery. So the 2 goals is deflect and discover. Right? And when you have multiple of the honeypot servers, they become a honey network. So it becomes a network of intentionally vulnerable devices. Okay. You have low interaction honeypots. These ones, they may only contain login prompts, and you have high interaction, and these are designed to capture more information from the threat actor. Then finally, you have sinkhole. Sinkhole, just the way it's like a bottomless pit that is steered to or that is designed, I should say, to steer unwanted traffic away from intended destination to another device. And again, the goal is to deceive the threat actor into thinking that their attack have been successful. Then we have IDSs and IPSs. IDSs detect, they only detect an alert, but IPSs prevent intrusion, they block attacks. Okay. Then we could also have an inline system. Now, these are systems that are connected directly in the network between the flow of data. Some others can be passive. For example, IDSs are working in a monitoring mode. So they receive copy and just alerts. They are unable to prevent, right? So they are passive. But IDSs need to be in line so as to be able to detect and prevent. Okay. Then you have and when it comes to intrusion detection and intrusion prevention system, it can be host-based or it can be network-based. So host-based intrusion detection system is there. These are installed on the host and identify intrusions on the host, whereas the network-based one identify intrusions on the network. Okay. So here's a question for everybody. Maya is researching information on firewall. She needs a firewall that can allow for more generic statements instead of creating specific rules. What kind of firewall should Maya consider purchasing for her needs? Let's go. I'm looking at the chat. She's looking for a firewall that allows for more generic statement. Very good. Very good. These are policy-based. They are flexible. They are unlike the rule-based. Okay. All right. So when it comes to software security protection, remember we talked about web application and URL filtering. So it's good to filter the website. And one of those security appliances for that is the URL filtering and web filtering. There are different types. There is the browser-based, meaning that they work at the browser level. There's the agent-based, meaning that it is an agent installed on the user system. And then you have centralized proxy scanning. So they are on the network. And then you have the cloud scanning, which is for the cloud environment. So they are filtering. For example, there's one that my kids' school use. I don't remember the name now, to monitor their system. So I get an alert that says, hey, so and so person search so and so. So they have an agent on the computer that looks at all the websites that they visit. And sometimes if it is harmful content, they will block it. And sometimes if it is something that's just FYI, it doesn't block it. It just shares and say, hey, this is the website that this person visited. Okay. And there are different categories of web filtering. There is content categorization, which is looking at several websites and categorizing them. So like the picture you saw earlier where it categorized all this. So if you look here, it says adult and sexual. So under that category, you have child abuse, images, nudity, pornographic / sexually explicit, sex education. It categorizes them. This is categorization. controversial content. It says criminal activities, cult, illegal drugs, illegal software, plagiarism. That's a category. All right. Under controversial. Shopping and entertainment, you have gaming. Under that, that's another category. Communication and media, that's another category. So some work based on categorization, and some will use the URL, will scan the URL to see the content of that website before allowing. And others would use reputational reputation score. So if the site has a negative reputation, it does not allow. Okay. For the domain name system, you have DNS filtering. Yesterday we talked about DNS threats. So you have DNS filtering, and this blocks harmful or inappropriate content as well. So you can use the DNS filtering solution or feature to block web pages, to block an entire domain. And so DNS resolver in this case act as filters by refusing to resolve any queries from certain domains. Okay. And this malicious domain can be found on the organization's unapproved list or block list. Then we have file integrity monitoring. So part of the things that an attackers attempt to do, I think we should take a 3 minutes break. Let's take 5 minutes break and be back. Actually, let's be back by 7:20. Let's take an 8 minute break. Yeah. And we'll be back by 7:20. Hey, Michael. We're just about to go on a 7 minutes break. We'll be right back. Are you back? Okay. Are we back? Are we back? Are we back? Very good. So next up is file integrity monitoring. The way I want you to think about this is from that integrity point of view. So when an attacker logs into your environment, when they do gain access, they might want to install a malware or a backdoor. And so when they install a backdoor, that modifies your program files. So it creates a program file. It makes changes to your program files. It shows that something has been added to your hard drive. So file integrity monitoring is a technology that is designed to keep an eye on that hard drive or keep an eye on your program files or certain critical folders and files, right? Keep an eye on them and make sure that it doesn't change. And if it changes, the changes need to be an approved change. So, and as you would imagine, as you use the application, as you use the server, you make changes. So there are so many legitimate changes that happen to that server on a daily basis that happens on your files on a daily basis. So because of that, it creates a lot of noise. And so it creates a lot of unhelpful information. I remember the beginning of my career, and I was deploying for the first time the Tripwire. Tripwire was the name then. So it's now Forta-Fim, right? So Tripwire-Fim back then. And I remember sitting in the bank with this customer, and they were asking me a lot of questions. And I'm just a newbie. Cut me some slack, but it's not their business that I'm a newbie. My contractor or we're a partner to them, so we are meant to know it all. And then so it was like, why am I seeing this IP address? Why am I seeing? My God. God. And it was showing me certain IP addresses that does not even match. And that was where, and I was just like, God, I think I couldn't start to do any research right there and then. I don't know what I told him, but it got off my back. And by the time I came back the following day, trust me, I came back with all and more answers than he had from the previous day. It was each time I remember, I talk about Fim, I remember that story. I'm like, good early old days. But yeah, that is what Fim does. It looks at the files and see if something has changed. And if it has changed, you want to make sure that that change is legitimate and not as a result of an attacker evading the network. Then we also have extended detection and response. This name, the way the name implies, we have the endpoint first. We started with endpoint EDRs. The one that is really popular in this part of the world is I don't know why I keep forgetting their name. Everybody uses it. Come on, guys. You don't know? Okay. I'm sure you know. I'm sure we all know, but EDR. It's not this one, not this one, not this one, not this one. Why is it so far away? No. Okay. Maybe they're in XDR now. CrowdStrike. Come on, CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike. They also have EDR. They have XDR. They have EDR. So it's CrowdStrike is one that I know that is really popular. What does it do? It's a tool that monitors an endpoint, looks at your system, and collects data from your system or from multiple endpoints and aggregate it to a centralized database. And this helps the security team to figure out issues that might be or threats, intrusions that might be affecting the endpoint. A step further is the extended detection. And this ones collect and correlate data across various network appliances, including servers, emails, systems, cloud, and endpoints as well, with the same aim of identifying intrusions. Okay. Very good. I like this question. Which of the following is not a common network device that provides the degree of security protection? Which one of these does not provide security protection? Is it a router, a switch? What about port security? Come on, guys. We talked about port security. You can configure port security on the switch. Endpoints, all right? It's the endpoints. Servers, you can harden. You can use servers to do DNS filtering. You put firewall rules on them. But endpoints don't provide they don't provide any level of security. Routers, you have access control list on routers and all that. Okay. So when it comes to architecture, it doesn't start after buying your switches, buying your routers and servers. It actually starts from designing. Okay. The network infrastructure needs to be properly designed to fit the need of the organization. And so some areas might be general access, some areas might be server. It needs to be designed to fit the need of the organization. Unfortunately, security comes as an afterthought, but that's no longer the case, given that a lot of organizations know and understand that they is a etiquette risk. So it's important to design security to fit the need of the organization. It's to design the network infrastructure to fit the need of the organization. And one of the mechanisms that is used at the point of design is to first do physical isolation. So when we talk about physical isolation, there's something called air gapping. Air gap, meaning this network is separate from all other network. For example, critical infrastructure network, your electricity, your critical infrastructure should be totally different from your computer network. Why? Because critical infrastructure, a lot of times, because they have zero tolerance for downtime, they don't get patched all the time. They don't get upgraded all the time. So you can find legacy operating system in the critical infrastructure environment. So you don't want to expose all of that to the internet. So you want to air gap that network. Then you also have logical separation, like using VLANs, virtual area and local area network segments, using segmenting. Okay, this VLAN is user VLAN. This and VLAN means virtual local area network. So it means that, or this VLAN is IT VLAN. This VLAN is security. This VLAN is finance. So that you're able to, irrespective of the physical location of that team member, they only can access their own virtual local area network. Yeah. This is what it is. So it allows users from, you could be on any floor, in any physically located on different switches, but because that virtual local area network is a group that exists on all of the switches, the system has this tag that say, okay, you're a member of this VLAN. And because you're a member of this VLAN, irrespective of physical location, you gain access. Then when it comes to architecting or designing infrastructure properly, if you heard, I mentioned something earlier about the DMZ. When I said, well, this is the email server, this is the web server, and this is a firewall right here, right? That this will then be the DMZ. The DMZ is called the demilitarized zone. It is the zone between the internal network and the public insecure network, which is the internet. And you put certain servers there because you want the services to be available from outside of the network. So if you look critically, what are the servers that are in the DMZ? The web server, because you want people to be able to reach your website from the internet. Then the email servers, because you want employees to be able to read their email or receive their emails from outside of the organization. Why is the database server not in the DMZ? You don't want people from the internet to access your database or steal your application or gain access to your application, right? So this is the DMZ. It's the demilitarized zone, and the demilitarized zone is where you keep all external facing network, external facing services. It's the one that interfaces directly with the untrusted user network, the internet. Then you have a jump server, okay? The jump server is a minimally configured server within the DMZ that runs only essential protocols and ports. So the way it works is it connects two devices from different security zone while providing access. A good use of a jump server is, for example, you want to connect from an untrusted network to a trusted server. There is a jump server in between. So instead of going directly from the untrusted server to the trusted server, you go to the jump box and through the jump box to the trusted server. Okay. This is an example of a network with two firewalls. This one for the internal network, this one for the external untrusted network. Okay. And then this is an example of the jump server. So you have to switch the DMZ. So if in case you want to go from the email server back internally to the network, you can place the jump server in between. All right. So the intranet is the internal network. The extranet is a private network where you put external facing application, but for your customers or your vendors or your partners. It is totally different from your guest network or from the internet. Okay. So the intranet is internal, it belongs to the organization, it is close to the public. So there is less vulnerable, it's less vulnerable to external threat actors. Then the extranet is a private network that you expose to your external customers or vendors. So they can provide maybe enhanced security from outside of your network, or they have some services that they provide for your organization. Okay. Then the guest network, similar to how we connect to the Wi-Fi at the college. Yes, that's the guest network. It only permits web surfing, internet access only. Okay. Let me take a pause. What are your questions? Questions? Okay. Then we have zero trust architecture. This is an initiative that is designed to prevent successful attacks. So before now, what used to happen is we use segmentation a lot. We say, oh, this is the server VLAN. And then any servers that is in the server VLAN can access one another. They can, talk with one another. And so if for any reason whatsoever, a server is compromised, the entire server VLAN becomes compromised. Hence the need for this zero architecture or zero trust architecture. So it is designed with the mindset that an attacker is already present. So these servers they shouldn't trust each other, or they just shouldn't trust one another, because it follows the pact of there is already an attacker on the network. And so it's more so a framework. It's a framework for implementing zero trust. And what it does is to focus on authentication and authorization, so that implicit trust is guarded against, but still maintaining availability. How does it work? It works by having different components. Those components is the data plane. So let me show you this. Mama have to refresh. So this is the concept of the zero trust architecture. There is the control plane, there is the data plane. Okay. So the control plane is where request is being sent and received. The data plane is where the actual asset is, the enterprise asset is. So separating the control plane from the data plane makes it really efficient to be able to determine to be able to make sure that authorization and authentication is effective. What does that mean? There is a policy engine here. So, and there is a policy enforcement point. A user makes a request. This could be a server-to-server communication as well. So a user makes a request and is requesting access. That request will go to the policy enforcement point. So the policy enforcement point checks with the policy engine. And this policy enforcement point can be the switch. It can be, most often than not, it's a switch to determine whether access should be granted or not. It can be a server. It can be an authenticator. All right, any authenticating device like a radio server. So it is looking at, the subject comes and say, I need access. The policy enforcement point looks at and say, okay, If you need access points, let me check with the policy decision point so that the policy decision point will tell me what I need to check on your system to see whether or not you deserve access. So it checks the policy decision point. Policy decision point says, oh, it meets the access, and then it grants access. It doesn't meet the access, it does not grant access. So there's a separation between the control plane, where the authentication and authorization happens, from the data plane. All right. That is the concept of the zero trust architecture. Okay. Questions? Okay. Next, we have access technologies. So, it is practically impossible to be in every location, or to be able to configure servers to at every locations, or to be able to travel, I should say, to every branch of the organization, or to be physically present to manage systems and servers and endpoints. Sometimes what is needed is remote access. And so your VPN is one remote access tool. The servers also, there are some software that does remote access. So, but during remote access, the communication needs to be secure. The communication needs to be secure to prevent an attacker from gaining access to the traffic as it is going from source, traveling from source to destination. So selecting the right protocol becomes very important. Now that's why for the VPN, VPN uses what we call IPsec, which contains a suite of protocols that provide encapsulation, authentication, and encryption. Then we also have network access control tool. You see this network access control tool? Okay, so let's talk about VPN. So it's for remote access. You can have remote access VPN. For example, I have remote access VPN on my computer. We use, I think the college uses Global Protect by Palo Alto. And so it's just an agent that is installed on my computer. And with that, I'm able to remotely access services on campus that are available from campus from anywhere that I am. That is a remote access VPN. It's an agent that is installed. It leverages my credential as a faculty from the Active Directory, right? Then we have site-to-site VPN. Site-to-site VPN, and these are the two most common ones. Site-to-site VPN means there is a connection from a VPN connection from one site to another. That is site-to-site VPN. Okay. And so the protocols that are used for VPN is IPsec and SSL. And it uses layer 2 tunneling protocol too. So the IPsec uses layer 2 tunneling protocol. It has it provides encapsulation, it provides authentication, it provides encryption with that. Then we have network access control solution. This is probably my favorite technology that I have worked with. I think, man. Let me even see. So I was in the business of traveling from one country to another, deploying this network access control solution back in the day, man. This is part of my career that I really enjoyed the most because, yeah, I was single, a security engineer, an expert on this solution, and I arrived at the country, and there's someone with a placard waiting for me. So those were interesting days. And the solution that I was deploying then was network and Forescout NAC. I know they're still very much in the business. Maybe there are other leaders. Yeah, they were one major leader at the time. Got now going on for yeah. One image in new tab. Yeah. So it was Cisco. It was still, what year is this? Let me see. Come on, let's see it clearly. Well, this was 2018 to 2023. Let's see. This one says 2018 to 2023. Yeah, so we had Cisco, we had Forescout. As far as I'm concerned, I would place Forescout over Cisco, but because Cisco is a much bigger organization than Forescout, you see, that's why you see their hub there. But then Forescout was is still, I don't know, I don't want to speak for them, but is a network access control solution that integrates with the switches on the network, integrates with the take a mirror, when we talk about port mirroring, gains access into everything that's going on the network and provides IPS, provides network access control. For example, your computer cannot access the network unless it meets certain conditions. Say the computer is on the Active Directory and the user is also a user on the Active Directory. Otherwise, there's so many rules that can be, or policies that can be used to determine whether access should be granted or not. I understand Cisco Heist. In fact, I trained on Cisco Heist because we had a Cisco Heist project coming. I just didn't wait to deploy that Cisco Heist project. But then the network access control solution is the same. It's the same technique. The technique is check the system, determine whether it meets the organization's policy requirement. If it does, meet it fully, allow. If it meets it partially, maybe it needs to be up to date. Say a user has been out of the office for maternity leave and their patches is outdated. Even though the user still exists and the computer is on the domain, they might need to quarantine that system so that it can get patched before allowed into the network. Or is this a guest? And so you see a guest, there is an HTTP hijack where that's what you see when you go to the campus as HTTP hijack, and you have to fill that form. In the case of PG, is just put your email address or anything that looks like an email address. But for other organizations that really care about security, it's a form that would include who you are, why you are here, who you are here to see, and then it's a workflow. It goes to the person that you are going to see. They click approve. Then it goes to the network security administrator, and that network security administrator approves as well, or confirms and then approves as well. So it's pretty much the way the name sounds, network access control. Computers, laptops, tabs, operating system. It even does things such as blocking USBs from the computer. So this is a simple process. Where is it now? This is a simple process where you have a quarantine network here. You have the the health regulation authority checks and see, or does the health check. So say the system is trying to log in. Once the system is trying to log in, it checks with the health check authority. Now that's the NAC. Checks with the health check authority, the antivirus, the patch, everything meets. It allows everything does not meet, it quarantines. If it doesn't, it's a guest, that's the way I explained it. Which of the following is not true about zero trust? Is it that zero trust assumes that the network have already been infiltrated? Is it that zero trust is designed to make system trusted? The motto of zero trust is never trust, always verify. Very good. Very, 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 very good. So this brings us to the end of today's class. What are your questions? What are your questions?
The live virtual machines they're a little finicky doing the live.
Say that again?
Are you hearing me?
Yes.
I'm talking about the virtual machine that we use for the assignments.
Mm-hmm.
Few of them are very finicky, like the one last night. It's just like you keep trying, like giving it a wrong answer when you do it. But when you read the sidebar to help you do
I'm not following what you're saying. Your mic seems to be going in and out for me.
I'm at work. I'm sorry about that. All right, I will text you. I will send you a message.
Okay.
All right.